So I'm the last thing that stands between us and lunch, so I'm going to go an extra 45 minutes if everybody's okay with that. All right, so I'm going to introduce to the stage Steve Hinshaw, Senior R&D Engineer at In-N-Out Burger. Next, I'm going to bring on Brian Chambers again, author of Chamber of Tech Secrets and Chief Architect at Chick-fil-A. Jeremy Lewis, Vice President of Professional Services at Dumac Business Systems. And Michael Lyon, Solutions Architect at Scale Computing. Awesome, gentlemen, thanks for joining me. So we're going to dive back into edge computing again, but we're going to go on an industry focus of quick serve restaurants, often referred to as QSRs. And with Jeremy joining us, we're going to dive into the convenience and fuel retail. I don't know how many of you recently have been at a gas station, but those things are not just serving gas. It's more like a restaurant that has gas these days. So it's right on point for us to talk about that. So let's start by, again, defining edge computing. So edge computing refers to running applications and processing data near the network's edge where the data is generated rather than relying on a centralized data processing warehouse or cloud. So I think that's pretty close to what Brian said earlier. So yesterday we had the opportunity to hear from our Chief Product Officer, Scott Loftmiller, and one of the things that he mentioned that we're going to really focus on and that Scott believes is it's also a feature set. So you're taking that compute power out to the edge, and so you need parts of the data center that need to move out there. You also want to bring some of the simplicity of the cloud down to that, but you need a platform that is built to do this. I noticed in Brian's deck, he had platform. It was all lowercase. We're going to work on Brian to see if we can get that to be uppercase next year, but we'll see how that goes. I'm not a sales guy, by the way, Brian. So, all right. So I want to start with Steve for my first question. So, Steve, you are a customer, In-N-Out Burger, and you've dove into the edge computing world here in the last, I think, 12 months, specifically with scale computing. Can you talk to us a little bit about your use case and how you have scale computing implemented?
I sure can. It was a very unique case where one of the things I do manage in-house is a fleet of cookout trucks, semi-sized, across 4 different states. And in those trucks, there was a way to make it better. And part of the reason when I found scale that fell into the lap, it was like, okay, I can use this to make things better, but there was also a request of us to say, hey, you know that cookout truck that you always do where you're not taking cash and credit? We now want to take cash and credit. And it's like, okay, that was a big challenge for us because we've never done it before. So by using scale and able to set up the VMs on there, I was basically able to have their normal everyday operations VMs running over a 3-node cluster. And then the very next day, when we go to this event where we're going to take cash and credit, shut those down and spin up the 5 VMs that we do need to have for the full operations. And it's running over the 4G, 5G signal, and it was working great. And it also allowed us to be able to dial into it to support it remotely and have visibility to it.
So you're taking the edge even out of the brick and mortar onto these food trucks, let's call it, cookout trucks. And so what was the initial thought of how you were going to make this happen? What kind of solutions were you looking to implement before you found scale computing?
Well, I tried years ago to do a VMware solution on there, and it failed. It just like the harsh environment of the trucks, the heat in there, the power and stuff because they're running off generators. It just didn't work. So I took that out and just went to 2 Wi-Fi based tablets. So when I found scale, I was like, tested in the lab, tested on the truck, brought it out to Austin, Texas to say, how can it handle the heat in August out there? And it performed well. So I was like, we got the green light to go on all the trucks and get them going on there and use the same tablets that I already had. I'm able to just use those to dial into the VMs. So now the speeds increase because the tablets aren't really doing any compute anymore. It's all done in the scale environment. So it helped the performance, it helped the reliability. If in the previous generation where one of those two tablets may have died because of power or something like that, the battery wore out, it would affect the printing and it would affect the operations of them cooking the burgers. I don't have that problem anymore because on scale it's running all the time as long as it's powered up.
Excellent. So we'll shift a little bit, and I want to go down to Jeremy. So Jeremy, you're with Dumac, and you guys actually are OEMing Scale Computing's software for a specific use case. And so I want to give you the floor and kind of talk about what Dumac's doing specifically around POS and the virtualization. I think, or did POS came up from Brian's standpoint of how that is it was a point solution. So talk a little bit about what you guys are doing.
Sure. So we are virtualizing the NCR RPOS point of sale system, which is a very legacy platform, required multiple physical machines running at a site. And as Brian brought up before, like some of the challenges that you have in the space is you need edge computing to go ahead and handle real-time tasks. So one of the tasks that we have is communicating to gasoline pumps. They need to be communicated to every 50 milliseconds, right? You cannot have that type of communication via a cloud portion of it. But our customers were getting tired of extended downtime periods, right? They have a single component failure, and then they would go ahead and they would see downtime of maybe 12, 13 hours going ahead and getting the site back up and restored to proper functionality. And that got them to the point where they could accept and process credit cards. They could go ahead and sell Twinkies and Cokes inside the store. But then there was a huge reporting issue behind that, right? Because the data that was in limbo there when the system went down is now lost, right? So now they have some cash, they have some credit transactions. What GL account do they apply those to? And a lot of our customers, as they continue to grow, as things are consolidated, they're becoming publicly traded companies, right? And one of the big items that our customers have said is, number one, we're an accounting company, but then number two, we go ahead and sell gasoline and we sell other items.
Excellent. So Mike, you, and I have a hard time calling him Mike because it's Mikey. So Mikey, you, from a scale computing standpoint, work with a lot of our prospects and our end users. And this has come up, and Jeremy just brought it up. Brian mentioned it earlier. Talk to everyone a little bit about scale computing platform and how it's giving you the ability to future-proof yourself because of the ability to run VMs and to also run right alongside the containerization of some of the new stuff that's coming down. Talk about that technology and some of the experiences that you've had in the field in talking to customers.
Yeah, and I want to expand upon what Jeff and Craig have been talking about using the word platform. I have always described Scale as an on-premises private cloud. And I got to thinking last week, I said, I've been using that analogy for a long time, and really, that's part of what the edge is, right? It's an on-prem private cloud giving you a platform for application delivery, for service delivery. And really, the challenge that we're faced with today is I need a platform for current and future applications. I need something that's survivable, that's highly available, that I can run my current workloads in their current state, their virtual machines, the applications, the databases, and as we transition those to microservices, we need to have a container runtime. We need to have that same highly available platform that can be managed at scale, that we can deploy applications to. It tightly integrates with your CI/CD pipeline, and that's looking towards the future. So we're able to provide that unified experience of being able to get you set up to migrate to something highly available today, give you that cloud-like experience on-prem, and then set you up for success in the future by being able to run containers and future workloads that are microservices driven.
So let's shift a little bit, and Brian, I'm going to come to you on this one. So we did a pre-call around this, and I was going to reference it as downtime, but Jeremy actually said, you should spin that and you should talk about uptime and put a positive on it. And so talk to us from a user experience, because I think everybody out here has been to a gas station or has been to a quick serve restaurant. Talk to us about the experience and how important that uptime is for you guys specifically in this industry.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you want to do anything that is important and it's going to be part of your customer's experience or something that your employees are going to depend on to do their jobs, like if it's gone, they can't do their jobs or their ability to be efficient is significantly degraded. If you can't trust the systems that are going to be under those things, you're probably better off not even creating those experiences in the first place. So having something that is extraordinarily resilient to the different types of failure situations, and I mean, it includes the actual edge platform and all the software components and all that, but we've talked about network some this morning, includes the network as well. Having a stack that's really resilient to those different failure modes is, I mean, if you can't get there, I don't think it makes sense to even be running the types of applications that we've been talking about. So we wanted to be able to build things that could transform customer experiences and team members and operators' experiences in the restaurant. And to do that, we needed something that was resilient to hardware failure, to network failure, to Kubernetes cluster failure, to particular application failure, and that's what we've ultimately arrived at. But yeah, I think that's why it's so important.
And there was a comment in our document that I noticed, and I'm not sure if it was Steve or you that put it in there, but obviously In-N-Out Burger and Chick-fil-A, they're two very large brands, and so there's some pretty large social media followings out there. And I noticed in there it was talking about you have to cover your brand, so it's even bringing it out of the IT world that you guys have to have that uptime. Talk a little bit about that maybe around protecting that brand and what that means.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to customer experience again, but if we're going to build any kind of solution from taking orders to digital experiences, to helping you know where you are in the queue to pick up your mobile order, whatever the use case may be, I mean, if it's going to be something that's customer facing, if the technology fails, that nobody says, oh, well, it must have just been one of your Intel NUCs in the back, died, and I'm okay with that. They don't care. They care about a seamless customer experience. Technology enables that when it does its job well. And we all know that at some point it's going to fail. So that's where, again, just the importance of not just having a technology solution, but having a resilient technology solution becomes so important. And it really is, the brand experience that's on the line. Like technology failures could result in long wait times for customers, or subpar food quality, or payment processing issues, or whatever the case may be. And we want to avoid that stuff. Like we're in the business of trying to have a positive influence on all who come in contact with Chick-fil-A, and that means customers having great experiences.
And so Jeremy, from your perspective, being kind of the services provider, talk about uptime to your end users from an SLA standpoint and that type of thing. What's virtualization allowing you guys to do for those folks?
Well, 80% of our calls into our help desk today are related to paperwork issues that our customers are having, right? So at the end of the day, the point of sale system that we're virtualizing goes ahead and does some batching of data, goes ahead and creates some export information that's picked up by third-party ERP systems. And one of the biggest challenges that we see is the equipment that we're virtualizing doesn't have the horsepower to go ahead and handle some of those tasks, right, associated with SQL databasing and whatnot. And that becomes a challenge for the operator for a couple of reasons. One, they have a manager there that's it's 11 o'clock at night, wherever they are based in the US, right? They're trying to reconcile their books so they can go home and end their shift, right? It gives them a poor experience. Usually when the manager in those stores are upset, it transfers over to the employees, and then the employees is given the end user a overall poor experience. But what we have also seen is, it used to be if a site controller, which is our main brains, went down at a site, it would impact the ability to maybe reprint a receipt from at the cash, at the pump where someone comes in and they want a receipt, or maybe it would give them a challenge where if they prepaid on register 1, they would have to go to register 1 to get a change back. Nowadays, as more microservices are being introduced with like food ordering through the system, leveraging some other cloud technology, when that site controller goes down, that store grinds to a stop. And a lot of our customers are choosing to, when that site controller goes down, to close their store versus going ahead and giving a poor experience to the customer. So that ends up being tens of thousands of dollars in lost revenue.
So Steve, let's come back down to you with your experience with scale to this point. Let's talk about your speed of deployment and how quickly you were able to get the scale solution going.
We got it off the ground very quickly, and I'll give you a great example of what happened recently at the Pomona Raceway. We're there for NHRA for a 4-day event with 8 trucks, and the person that manages that department said, hey, we want to have 3 terminals taking orders on these 3 trucks over here. And he came to me late the day before the event was going to happen and said, oh, I should have asked for like these other 2 trucks to do it as well. With scale, on the fly, I'd take my laptop, export another VM there, give them another tablet, and they were ready to go the next day. Super quick, super easy, and it ran the entire 4-day event without an issue.
Awesome. Let's shift into, and this could be probably for Brian or Steve. What's your IT resources look like from a person standpoint? Maybe per location, maybe overall. Maybe Steve, you can
You want to
start.
start with me? Well, right now we don't have scale in the restaurants. It's only on the fleet of cookout trucks, but that is 22 trucks across 4 different states. And with that, I have hands-on field service technicians that I work with that if we need someone to like roll a truck out to take care of anything where it could be a printer port or something like that, they can handle that there. But remotely, I'm able to manage all the trucks from my office, my desk, among all the other stuff that I do. I did share with the Tier 2 help desk how to support it as well, because there's times I'm like on a plane or on vacation, so there's backup there, but it runs itself. It's like I don't have a lot of physical issues on the trucks, even though it's a harsh environment. It's a semi-truck driving down the road with these Simply Nooks sitting there, and it just seems to run. The biggest thing I would ever have is like the power plug coming off the back of the Nook, but that can be addressed. You can secure that pretty easily.
And so I think, Brian, we'll take that down to you because you've had experience and you've probably seen these efficiencies. What's those teams now look like? Have you been able to redeploy some of your IT folks to focus on other things? How's it look for you?
Yeah, well, we start at the restaurant level, so we've never had like dedicated staff that would be technology related in the restaurant, just like traditional team member employees that cook food, serve guests, things like that. So when we rolled out our solution, we did have installers that did a significant percentage just to try and, we're in a constrained physical space and trying to make sure that things landed in a spot that was going to be good long-term, preferably not like in an everyday workspace. We have funny stories that I've told before, but we experienced things like our team members installed some of the initial boxes, but then when they needed to plug in their cell phones, they would like unplug one of the nodes. So that was less than awesome. We did rely on some installers for that, but we have some regional field support that's available for varying like technology needs, but they don't really spend a lot of time on the edge environment because much like what you guys have talked about with scale, we invested a lot of energy in zero-touch provisioning. So a lot of our failure modes in worst cases result in just replacing a device, which is shipping it, having somebody swap Ethernet and power, and everything takes care of itself, boots back up, joins the cluster, returns to service. And we don't even do a lot of like remote access to our environments from the cloud side. So we invested in automating as much of that as we can so that we don't have to have like tens or hundreds of people doing operations on the platform. So it probably hasn't meant like repurposing of people, but it's probably bent the growth curve in terms of being able to support the types of applications that we want to be able to run in restaurants. So on the platform team side, we've kept it to really a single sort of DevOps product-focused team that runs that platform as their product, 8 or 10 people, and then a support partner that does a lot of the initial triage work for us.
And so let's just go on down the line, Jeremy. I'll give you that one. What's IT resources look like in a general convenience fuel retail store?
Most convenience stores do not have an IT team, or if they do, it's someone from a main office. And with a lot of our customers, they're spread across multiple states, right? So going ahead and putting someone in a vehicle and having them drive 14, 15 hours to replace a component is very challenging, right? So having everything that you can have a traditional cashier or manager at a C-store plug in and return to service is extremely important.
So Mike, we're going to go right down to you. So you've been with scale computing for quite some time, and talk about the consistencies that you now see between the SMB and the distributed enterprise, because what we're hearing these guys basically say is we have a bunch of SMBs out there with limited IT resources. Talk about some of the consistencies that you see scale computing's technology delivering there.
I mean, it's some of the same things you were just asking about: IT resources, the personnel, the expertise, and the fluency. And do you have those, in a large organization that's at scale, right, across dozens or hundreds or thousands of sites? But the SME, where it's the law office, the small manufacturing facility, it's the same. It's a multi-hat wearing IT director. They're faced with a lot of different challenges. I mean, it's the same thing for the edge and as it is for the SMB, right? It's limited resources, not just in terms of personnel, but environmentally. Very often it's not a data center that is actually where the cluster lives. It's just like it is in a store or a retail environment. It's in a closet somewhere that maybe is marginally cooled, right? So we need to be able to provide high availability to be able to handle those types of failures. And the other thing is, from an application and survivability perspective, it's the same needs and the same challenges, right? Dealing with replacing hardware. And this kind of goes to and it's more around the nooks, but the cattle versus pets discussion when you think about in microservices and containers, being able to replace those compute units, the NUCs in the field, that really simplifies the entire life cycle, right? And we can even get to that point with x86 servers as well. But it's all about resource constraints, not just boots on the ground, the expertise and the personnel, but environmentally, dealing with the space, the temperature, the resource constraints in general.
Let's shift a little bit and talk about data security and privacy. So maybe Brian, talk about how is edge computing helping you be compliant with some of the government things that maybe are coming, or even things that are already in place?
Yeah, I don't know that we have a lot of examples of current state, but I think it's that potential readiness. I think in the restaurant industry, the type of data that's probably going to be governed is going to be more like customer-related information. We don't have a tremendous amount of that is in our platform today, but you could imagine scenarios where you might want to personalize experiences in a restaurant or things like that, and may have that in your solution or in your architecture. And so in those cases, being able to provide assurance really that data that's being used, if it is a governed data asset, that you have the capacity to keep it local if you need to. I think that's where the value is in that regard for us. It's more about potential and readiness for what could come, as opposed to something specifically that we designed for. We designed more for the capacity challenges and the customer experience, but it's a nice byproduct to be compliance friendly if needed in the future.
Steve and Jeremy, any comments on data privacy and what Edge is doing for you there?
There's nothing on our end that really is affected because we don't have like the app or delivery or any of that type of stuff. So. Cool.
In our space, most of our customers fall under the payment card industry standards. So we have a dedicated machine that goes ahead and processes payments for the application. What would happen before switching these customers to virtualization is we would have a condition with that device, and next thing you know, loyalty, credit, all that type of stuff is not functioning. We would require boots on the ground, keyboard monitor, mouse connected to the unit, power cycle it to see what's going on with it, and go down that path, right? So it's extensive downtime for the customer because of security requirements. We couldn't RDP into it, do that type of stuff. Now that we've had that in the scale environment, we can easily look in the dashboard and say, hey, is this machine functioning? Do we have expected CPU usage? Do we have expected memory usage? If not, power cycle it, bring it back up, and start troubleshooting further.
So Steve, you've had exposure to scale computing. What's some other potential use cases, or what's the future look like now for In-N-Out Burger with more Edge?
Well, my next project is basically to set up in the lab what a future restaurant could be, because with being able to have more than 3 nodes there, why can't I virtualize every single terminal and get away from having a physical terminal? Because I've proven on the cookout trucks, I can use an iOS device, an Android device to dial into the VM and still do the same operations that we do currently with having cash drawers, having printers print, and taking cash and credit. And it's like I can basically make everything run in the scale environment and stuff like that. So that's one of my next future goals, is to get a store of the future in the lab and see how many different things I can virtualize.
And Brian, for you, without giving away your secrets, what's the future look like for you guys?
Well, I kind of talked about it earlier, but I think the reality is that the workloads of the future are going to have some sort of ML AI component to them. It could be small. It could be just an algorithm like what I described in the use case with the forecast and all that earlier, or it could be something where the entire application is, you know, a llama to, you know, trained model that's doing some particular function to co-pilot assist an employee, or you know, do some sort of other customer-related experience. So I think that's what we're going to see more. It's not without challenges, because, like I said, GPUs aren't free. They're still expensive. And thinking about doing large-scale deployments, like we're 3,000 restaurants, we're 3 nodes per store, 9,000 nodes of GPU is a big capital investment. So making sure that the you know, the payoffs are there for those things, that it's really going to move the needle in terms of you know, the customer service, the team member experience, or whatever the thing that we're after is. I think it will come. I think that's the next big thing, and that's what we're exploring as we kind of look towards the future.
And so Jeremy, on down to you. You've obviously started with the NCR RPOS. Where do you see the future with scale for you guys?
I think one of the things that we still have the opportunity is more automation of the deployment application. Right now, we still have a fairly manual staging process today of the images and stuff that we're deploying in it. We want to start leveraging Ansible more to automate that deployment when they go out to the field. So we have less resources within our environment doing that. I feel like the less humans you have touching that sometimes, the less failure points that you have. Also, we're communicating with our customers today and saying, hey, we virtualized your point of sale platform, but what other workloads do you have in your environment that we can virtualize for you? That's going to go ahead and give you some more redundancy in your space. And very much like Brian was talking about, we have customers that are deploying new technology all the time. And if there's a failure in that technology, your customers become upset. They go to social media, they start posting about that. And our goal is to remove that that concern that these individuals have, right, around deploying new technology, and making it quicker and going ahead and making it overall cheaper for them to deploy and support.
So Mikey, we'll go down to you there. Talk about some of the other industries that you've been involved. So we focused on the QSR here. Talk about some other examples of what you're seeing in opportunities in the other industries.
Yeah, I mean, retail would be a subset, I guess, possibly, or, you know, maybe a larger group. But retail is really an organization that they're embracing so many different technologies at the same time. AI-driven workloads for loss prevention, for heat mapping of customers and products. Those all require resources. Enhancing the inventory and capabilities of the existing point of sale and database applications. Customer loyalty applications. Sensors and IoT devices across the locations in the store. Those are all driving the need for additional compute power, and again, for a specific platform. They were talking about Harrison Steel. That's another great example of, in the manufacturing space, where it's similar to retail, right? Where we're, instead of processing customer transactions, we're processing data from devices, from industrial controllers. We're looking at motor speeds and output rates. All of this data needs to be processed, it needs to be handled, it needs to be forwarded, and you can't just shove all that onto a network. You need to build out that type of infrastructure, and you really need a platform to do that, right? So you can build upon the existing technology that you've laid out, and then that's going to enhance their capabilities to add in future workloads, right? And outside of manufacturing and retail, Specifically in the SMB market, your typical small and medium businesses, they're looking for opportunities to get a platform in place specifically for security too. There's a lot of requirements, not just PCI and retail, but governance and data laws dictating how data needs to be protected, where it needs to be stored off-site. And the other thing that's driving all three of these different areas together for us is the need for automation. We've talked about our Ansible collection. We've got a very robust API. Even the smaller customers, smaller industries with limited resources are looking to take advantage of automation to drive application deployment, to drive innovation, and even to make management at scale easier.
So let's shift gears and talk about support. So I'm gonna start with you, Steve, and then I'll come down to Jeremy. Have you had experience with scale support, and what has that experience been like?
Yeah, it was a very smooth transaction, great follow-up from the team and stuff like that, everyone I've talked to and sent messages back and forth. So, and I've only had to use it a handful of times, and it was more like trying to help me through understanding like something in the system and stuff like that with maybe storage or why this node's not coming back online or something like that. And yeah, it's been a very positive experience for me.
Excellent. Jeremy, your experiences?
I've used the support several times for primarily like software updates that weren't available in Fleet Manager, going ahead and getting them pushed out. I've talked to them on the phone, I've emailed them. Anytime that I've engaged with them, like both on the email and on the phone, they're very polite, very responsive, and I feel like my issue is giving like highest priority in getting it resolved. Excellent.
So we've got 4.5 minutes. We do stand between this and lunch. So I know, Brian, you kind of gave some insight of how to get started with edge computing, but maybe what's some lessons learned from you, Steve, and some advice on how to get started here?
I basically, if you set it up in a lab and you just shelter it from everything else on your network, that's the best scenario to like get it all up and running and stuff like that, and then just start hammering away at like, hey, what's going to happen if I unplug the power on this thing? Is it just going to come back or not? And so that's how I approached it. And when I saw the results come back, it was just like, okay, this stuff is rock solid, is working, because in this cookout truck environment that I was going to put this compute, it was just like the trucks aren't powered on like a store would be 24/7. They're shutting down, powering on, they're run on generators and stuff like that. So, and you also, I needed to make sure that it could be like if the network's not up, if it can't talk to the cloud, is everything still going to work? So I isolated it in the lab from anything and just set it up there. And anybody at scale, you could probably reach out to kind of hold your hand if you need that little extra support and stuff like that. I'm more like, yeah, I'll call you guys when I need to. Like, that's the way I learn and stuff like that. And it was well worth the investment for me.
Awesome. Brian, if you could do it all over again, would you do it, or?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's a very different landscape today than it was when we started contemplating our approach to this in, like late 2016. So, the services that are available, the maturity of vendors, a lot of the offerings, things have progressed a lot and come a long way. There's advantages to having complete control over a solution, but there's also, significant costs that come with that. So, thinking about your previous question too, if I was starting today, I would back my way into the platform by starting with what are the user experiences in the near term I anticipate wanting to be able to create. And if I think about that, that's going to help me with, do I need to be able to provision something without a human involved or not? Do I need to have a cluster or just a single node? Do I need crazy resiliency or not? What are the things that I ultimately need? And then you can pick your solution based off of that. And I think if I was starting today, that's what I would do again, is look at what we've got and look at where we want to go and start asking those questions and back my way into what's the best possible solution that we can end up at today.
Jeremy, final thoughts from kind of the service provider, OEM world?
Well, we have a lot we wanted to virtualize going into this, but we broke it out into 3 chunks in our roadmap, right? where we went ahead and said we want to virtualize mission critical items first, right? Very similar to what Ryan looked at, and said this is where we're going to get the biggest lift for the amount of time and money that we're investing into it, and this is our quickest way to market. So that was our first focus, and then we created a stage 2 and a stage 3, right? And as we learned along the way, those stage 2 and stage 3 goals changed quite significantly, right? So I'm glad we didn't stop and go ahead and wait until we completed every toll gate along the way before we started releasing the product, because if we did, we would have really missed the targets on different things. So start with what's your mission critical items and focus on those, and you're going to learn along the way as you get feedback from your end users and your overall support team and whatnot.
Awesome. So one of the important things that I want to mention here is the importance of this event and the importance of everyone networking. So as I look down across here, we met Brian through Edge Field Day. He was a panelist there, and we then learned that he was working with Simply Nook. We work with Simply Nook delivering our products. Mako Networks is a partner of Scale Computing. They introduced us to Dumac. Dumac is going to market with us and Mako as a solution in the convenience fuel retail. We have customers like this with Steve, who is benefiting from this. So the ecosystem is just growing expansively, and it's super important. And it's the communication and the feedback that our engineering team and our R&D team gets from these type of events that allows us to go and innovate and build this platform for you. So find these guys, they're gonna be at the show. Find Scott, he's the guy right here in the front with the pink hair. He'll take all the feedback about any of the features and innovation you wanna see. So Steve, Brian, Jeremy, Mike, thanks for joining me on this. I think we're right at time, and we'll bring Marlena back up to get everything under control, and we'll head out to lunch. So thanks, guys. Much appreciated.
Thanks,